Hello everyone, welcome to IAS classes. So today we are going to be discussing the next chapters of volume 1. In this, we'll also be bringing together whatever areas are required from volume 2 as well. Whatever is left in volume 2 will be discussed later. So first chapter is about trade. So again, some of the concepts from previous lectures are going to be brought in again. So you have to be familiar with those things. Please make sure you are already familiar with those things. One example is the Chakravyuha concept you've seen, or the exit concept. That is one thing you should be aware about. Another thing is investment was a big issue for us. NX or export was a big issue for us. So these concepts also you have to just remember when you're discussing this lecture. Now, we will start now. We will just wait for 2 minutes before starting the class. So in case any of you have any issues, please put the comments to us. Raise your hands if everyone is able to hear fine. So maybe there are some audio issues. Just in case you are not able to hear, please raise your hands. Just give us 1 minute. We'll just fix this issue and then we'll be starting. Okay, so the issue is solved now. In case anybody is still facing any problems, please comment. Please let us know. We will fix it immediately. So the problem is actually solved. We can continue. So as we discussed, some concepts from previous lectures are still relevant to us. In fact, the whole economic survey brings the same thing again and again. So these concepts you should be familiar with. Now what we are going to discuss is India's position in the trading world. How should India engage with the world? And what are the meaning of this PTAs? What is free trade agreement? Those things we'll be discussing. So first, as everything, as always, chapter structure. Now if you remember, how does economic survey address any chapter? First, what is the problem? Or define the problem. So here, economic survey first looks at India's trade policy. So first it's defining India's trade policy and then looking at the reasons for the trade policy, and then it's saying that has actually become a problem now. So something that we were continuing with is now a problem. Why? Because circumstances have changed. So what changes we will be seeing. Now if circumstances are changing, if a problem is there, some solution has to come. That solution should be India should change India's stance in the WTO. India should change what we are currently doing in the WTO. How should we change is another question. Another change that is required is PTAs. How should India's role or India's stance be towards PTAs? To understand that, first economic survey makes us understand the role of PTAs, what is the benefit of PTAs, especially for India, are there any benefits? A complete analysis is done. Now this part is very technical in nature, not very required for us, so only the relevant parts of it will be discussed in the class. Then we'll discuss the recommendations or the solutions. So problem has been defined, etc. Now it's time to discuss the solutions. So it's a new policy directions. How should India move forward? So that's the overall chapter structure. Now we'll go into the details of each of these things. So first, India's trade policy as such. Now here, economic survey says India's trade policy has been protectionist. However, economic survey does not go into the details of why it is so. Now here, a lot of historical concept, especially from recent history, is relevant. So again, tablet students will have a full understanding if they've gone to the chapter called LPG. We have an LPG reforms, we have a chapter on that. We have gone through all the details about LPG. However, some items, aspects, I'm just listing out here. What you have to do is either from tablet or from standard books, you have to understand this concept. First thing, as we saw earlier, India was a socialist economy. Now we had a lot of protectionist mentality, primarily about forex. Foreign exchange we wanted to preserve because foreign exchange was a valuable commodity in India. We didn't want foreign exchange going out. So what we did was we tried to preserve foreign exchange as much as possible. Second is something called import substitution. Third is something called self-reliance. Now, as we discussed in the first lecture, when we discussed Chakravyuha, why did India become protectionist or socialist in nature? Because we had been exposed to the worst evils of capitalism and of globalization before the actual globalization of the previous globalization, which was during the colonization period, colonial period, which was also a globalization period. So what happened? India became highly conscious about fact that some other country is trying to control us, or lack of sovereignty, etc. So India started believing that even if we are importing a good, such as steel, an important good from another country, we are losing a sovereignty. So we wanted to become self-reliant in steel, all the core industries, even on food. Now for the self-reliance, we decided we are going to import substitute. Import substitute means whatever we are supposed to import, we'll instead create ourselves. And we put very strict forex controls. So we had the FERA, Draconian Act of FERA, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. So all this, the forex was to be protected because whenever you import anything, money will go out, right? India had a scarcity of forex, and forex was required for oil and for some vital imports which was required for India at that time. So we wanted to protect forex. So protecting forex and aiming for self-sufficiency, self-reliance led to import substitution, and that made India highly protectionist. We were also always trying to protect our own industries. We were very anti other industries coming in, external sector coming in. However, what has happened now is that the economy has changed. We don't need to be so protectionist anymore. We can change our stance, which is what economic surveys say. So India's trade policy derives from all the historical factors, but we can now change. International trade architecture is changing. The countries that were big shots then are not big shots anymore. Mega regional trade agreements are coming in, which India is getting excluded. So again, we have to realign our stance. So multiple things that are changing. Seismic shift means very big changes. And the world economy is slowing. So again, a lot of pressure on domestic industry. All these things are happening. Now in WTO itself, the Nairobi WTO negotiations has not been very successful. India was not able to push its agenda much. And overall, there was a feeling of being stalled. Now, if you want to read more about it or discuss more about it, please watch our YouTube video on WTO. So overall, we have all these changes happening. We have one failure also happening. This was a failure. It can be considered as a failure for India also. So when failure happens and a lot of changes happen, it's time to self-interrogate. Ask ourselves, what are we doing wrong? Is it time to change something? Should we change the established practices? So there are some issues to introspect on. There are 5 issues primarily. One is providing support to farmers in the light of WTO rules. So WTO does not allow countries to provide so much support to farmers. That is part of the, again, WTO discussion in YouTube. You'll be able to find this, the full details about that. Some aspects we'll touch on today itself. Second is erratic trade policy or volatile trade policy hurts the farmers a lot. Farmers are not able to predict. So they keep getting hurt because of trade policy. There is something called the big but poor dilemma. We'll see this a bit later in more detail. So this also has to be confronted. A lot of ongoing stresses are there. We have to correct those stresses. And in general, with the trade, we have to engage better. How to better engage. So all these aspects are part of our discussion. So first, and one of the most crucial aspects in the WTO discussion is agriculture. India's major issues are all in agriculture. Now, there are 2 things India wants. Both are to protect farmer interest. One is special safeguard mechanism. This is in case some countries sending too much goods to us, we will be able to impose special safeguard mechanism here, primarily on farm goods, primarily on vegetables and farm products. Second is the food security or public stockholding issue. What is food security? We have to be able to provide food for the poor of the country who are not able to get it through PDS, etc. Public stockholding means India has to buy from farmers and then give it to these people. So this can also be construed as a measure to protect farmers, and the WTO is against this kind of protection. So these are 2 issues for us in WTO. We want both. We want public stockholding, we want SSM. So we have been pushing for it, but other countries are not happy to give it to us. So that is a big point of contention. So we'll look at both. First, special safeguard mechanism. Now it's very, very simple. This is India. Okay. This is India's border. Okay. This whole thing is India. Now, suppose wheat is very important in India because a lot of our farmers are depending on wheat. Now, suppose India is importing some wheat. Okay. Now, suppose there was a big surge of wheat. For example, for some reason, a lot of wheat was produced in the world. So what will happen? A lot of import of wheat starts happening. A lot of import. So what happens with all this wheat coming in India, we have supply curve and we have demand curve, right? The supply increases. When supply increases, price decreases. And price of wheat decreases very drastically. What happens to this person? This poor farmer starts crying. He starts crying. Why? Because he's not getting any money now because the price of wheat has come down drastically. Now, this can be considered as a threat for a domestic industry or a domestic product. Then what we can do is we can say, I put a quota. So all this wheat won't be allowed to come in. Only this one wheat will be allowed to come in. So we can put a quota that only this much wheat is allowed. Second is I can put a tariff there. I can put an extra tariff so price does not go too much low. because price will be propped up by tariff. It becomes P plus T. The T becomes tariff price. So overall price will not drop too much. So I can do these things to protect my farmers. So this is the meaning of imposing trade barriers whenever there's a surge of agricultural imports. SSM is primarily mainly aimed at agricultural products. Now question economic survey is asking is that, do India really need SSM? Do we need to protect so much? And the reason why they're asking that question is we have other ways of protecting our farmers also. Do we need SSM also? What other way do we have? The other way is that Uruguay round, when the WTO was first formed, India was allowed very high ceiling. What is the meaning of a ceiling? It means that suppose this is a ceiling. Suppose 50% is the ceiling. Now 50% is the ceiling. We have the right to increase our tariff rate, customs duty till 50%. Now suppose India's current rate is 5% in that particular product. That means there's a lot of flexibility there. India can increase as required. Now imagine the same situation India is here. Import surge is happening. What can we do? We'll just increase the tariff. And without having SSM, we already have that right. So why should we again ask for SSM also when we already have this option? Now there's something called tariff line. Tariff line means there are multiple types of product lines, different products. Each of them will be given its own percentage, which India has imposed. Each will be having its own ceiling, 50%, 100%, etc. So in most of the tariff lines for India, we have a nice high ceiling. We have a high enough ceiling that we have a lot of flexibility. As and when required, we can increase the tariff and thus increase the prices. So you can see here, high levels up to 40 to 100%, even 150% is allowed for India. So economic survey is asking the question, when you have so much flexibility already, why do you need SSM also? You're saying I want high ceiling also, I want SSM also. You can't have both. High ceiling and SSM you can't have. At least one you have to give up is what economic surveys say. So does India really need SSM? That is the question. Even more freedom is what we're asking. Already we have freedom from high ceiling rate. Okay, now our applied rate, which is the actual rate, is actually much lower than a bound rate. Bound rate means ceiling rate. We have ceiling rate here, we have actual or applied rate here. If the difference is very large, then we have a lot of flexibility. Only in some products, dairy products, milk products, fruits, hides, etc., we actually have it very close. Actual and the ceiling is very close. So there we don't have much flexibility. Now if that is our main concern, if these products are main concern, then economic survey says instead of asking for SSM in all products, why don't we ask only for these products ceilings to be increased? Why can't we do that? So we should call for a very specific discussion on those tariff lines and not a generic discussion on SSM. That is economic survey's important argument. So guys, everyone able to hear properly? No one has any issues now, right? In case of any issues, please raise your hand. So I can see some of the hands are still raised. So if you're not having any issues, please put down your hands. You can put down the hands. You can bring it down. Okay, thank you. So now seems like everyone is okay. Let's continue. So second issue is the food security issue. Now in the food security issue, India of course wants this freedom. We want the food security. However, we already have it again. So economic survey is essentially saying two of the most crucial things India is arguing for, we already have it. Why are we asking for more? Let's not ask for so much. It's a negotiation. We have to give and take. We can't only say I'll take. So what happens? India wanted a protection. What happens is this: if India puts public stockholding, our amount of money we are putting into agriculture will become more than the de minimis level, which is discussed in the WTO video on YouTube. Okay, this is the video you have to go and watch for full discussion. So there we have discussed about de minimis, etc. So if India's support of farmers become more than de minimis, what happens is India can be taken to a dispute settlement body. In dispute settlement body, India can be fined. Other countries might put a duty on us. All these things can happen. However, we have got a guarantee, a legal guarantee in 2014. Okay, what we had was something called the Bali Peace Clause. What it meant is that for 2 years, we will not be taken to the dispute settlement body even if we violate the WTO criteria. But now we have a situation under which until we find a proper solution, we have a guarantee we will not be fined or we will not be penalized for this. So if for public stockholding or food security, India give more support to farmers, it is okay. WTO will not penalize us. Now this is one viewpoint. The other viewpoint is discussed in the YouTube video. You can watch that. So it's a permanent solution which India is really pressing for, really necessary. We already have a legal guarantee. So again, we already have it. Why do we need it? So why defend these kind of policies when we already have something? Why is India always asking for more? That is what is frustrating our partners, is what economic survey is saying. Now, in addition to that, these policies that we want, right? Providing support for farmers and all these things are things that we anyway want to move out of, because they have a lot of bad impacts. India has to move out of those. Water table, overuse of electricity, environmental pollution, all these things are happening because we are promoting over overuse of these things and overproduction of certain areas. And in addition, government is going to move towards direct income support, DBT, JAM, etc. we have seen, right? And DBT is not prohibited under WTO. DBT is not market distorting, so it is not prohibited. And crop insurance again is not prohibited under WTO. It is only classified under, it is not classified as a category to be prohibited. So these are not restricted by WTO rules. So if anyway we are moving from here to here, why are we fighting for this and not fighting for this? This is where we should be focusing on, is what the economic survey is saying. So don't defend these unnecessary policies. Let's start our focus on the important areas. Now, at the time of Uruguay round, why did India ask for protection at that time? We will ask for high ceiling rate, everything we asked for, right? Because India was a net importer. So we were always concerned about the border protection. Border protection was our biggest concern. We wanted to protect our industries. We wanted to protect our agriculture. But now we have moved away from border protection. Border protection was a criteria priority then. Now we have moved to domestic support. Now we are providing domestic support. So BP to DS. So earlier border protection was our biggest priority. Now domestic support is the biggest priority. So during border protection time, our biggest priority was that we should have high tariffs. Ceilings should be high, which we got. Now for domestic support, our actual biggest priority is support capacity. How much is allowed to be supported should be high. So this is where we should be focusing our energy on, is what economic survey is saying. At that time, it was India's choice. Now we have to change our choice. We have to change our policy stance. So India's agriculture has changed now. We are competitive. We are actually an exporter also now. So we have to focus on domestic support, less on tariff protection. We can move away from border protection to domestic support. And this will help us, help our farmers also. So then economic survey says, what is the way forward in WTO? The way forward is very simple. One is, we have to change our WTO obligations, move away from border protection towards domestic support, Second, all our high tariff bindings we can actually bring down because that is border protection. Instead, we'll try to fight for food security, public stockholding provisions, higher levels of domestic support. And even this is required when we move towards pulses. As we discussed in agriculture, we have to give higher minimum support price of pulses. Again, that is a kind of domestic support. So WTO has to accept that. So start focusing energies here and not on border protection. That time is over is what economic surveys say. Now, this will be good for India, and even our trading partners will be happy to do this. Because if India says, I want domestic support also, and I want border protection also, if I say I want both, then the trading partners won't be very happy. But if I say, okay, I remove this, I only want this, then even they will be okay with giving, because nobody likes unreasonable trading, unreasonable negotiations. So India cannot say, I want both. India can say, I will take one. The other one I'll give up. So then they will also feel India sacrificing something. We should also help India. Now, another important area economic survey focuses on is the volatile trade policy. Now, what is the meaning of this volatile trade policy? The agricultural policy, right? Especially trade policy is extremely volatile. It keeps changing with circumstances. Whenever circumstances change, trade policy also changes. So when prices go up, world prices go up sometimes, right? At that time, what happens? Domestics, or if there is domestic scarcity, we'll put export restriction. For example, when onion ka price went up in India, we said export restrict. Don't allow onion to be exported. And when reverse happens, import tariff imposed. So at different times, different policies becomes too confusing for farmers. And it eventually hurts the farmers because they're not sure how much to produce. So actual production comes down, and this hurts both farmers and the consumers. So what economic survey clearly says is that farm policy, minimum support prices, and even export-import policy has to be announced well in advance and should not be altered during the entire season unless there are some important, very exceptional circumstances. Otherwise, keep a stable, steady policy going. Now comes the big but poor dilemma. Very, very important part of the economic survey. What it means is that India is a big country now, but India is also a poor country. Now, how do we reconcile that? As a poor country, India deserves support. But as a big country, India has to open up its market. We can't just keep demanding things. So as a poor country, India has a right to demand. But as a big country, India also has to give some concessions. So both has to happen. So one, India's self-perception, and India is actually a poor country also. So because of that, we have to be always willing, we have to actually demand a lot of things, because we have to be demanding more support for our farmers, right to give more support, maybe even higher tariff, etc., because we have to protect our poor people. However, because India is self-perceiving as a poor country, we always take a stance in WTO, I am a poor country, so you cannot expect me to do much. You have to do things for me. But reciprocity is expected by our partners. They want us to also say, see, I will do this for you, you will do this for me. Then it's a give and take. That is like reciprocity. Without that, a proper negotiation can't happen. So India has been used to a take negotiation. Now we have to start a give and take negotiation. Now India's policies have a significant impact. Our partners want access to a market because we are one of the largest growing economies. So because of that, they want access. So if we can get protection, that is the take part. We also have to give access, that is the give part. Protection will be domestic support. So we can, instead of having border protection, we can now have domestic support to protect our own farmers, etc. And border protection, if we can remove, there we can have access by foreign countries, etc. So again, simple thing, border protection, stop, start domestic support. If we ask for both, then we will not get either, which is what was happening in WTO. So overall, we have to be more reciprocal in our engagements. Now, earlier on, before 1990s, India was always non-reciprocal, which means India used to demand things, but India never used to compromise much. We used to say, we are a poor country, we need help, etc. So India was small enough. People used to overlook this. But now India is big. We are a big market. So now they will not be willing to overlook. They will want reciprocity. So partners expect India to play the reciprocity game. You can use this exact language. You open your markets or you reduce your freedom to protect. Only then we'll allow you to come into a market, or we'll reduce our own freedom. India cannot say, see, I want to protect my market, but I also want to be able to access your market. And at the same time, I won't allow you to come into my market. This kind of discussion is not going to happen anymore, is what the economic survey says. So India has to accept that we are a big economy now. At the same time, we also have to be aware that there is a lot of poverty in the country also. So we need to tread a line which takes into account both these cases, big but too poor. We are big and we are poor in a lot of circumstances, in a lot of areas. So to preserve WTO, India has to join the game. What is the game? The game of reciprocity. So India has to play along with the other partners. Only then WTO can be preserved. Otherwise, it will be consigned to irrelevance. If countries like India, which are the bigger economies of the world now, is not participating properly in WTO, then the role of WTO in the world will become meaningless. And also a lot of the countries are moving towards regional agreements. So this trend is becoming larger and larger now. So India has to start playing along. India has to take a leadership role here. So we have to make it attractive for our trading partners to engage in WTO. And one way to make it attractive is, if you come and engage in the WTO, then you can actually enter India. Now, everyone wants to be able to enter India right now. So that will give them an incentive to participate in the WTO process. And multilateralism in WTO instead of regional cooperation. So we should be playing the reciprocity game. We should use our markets as a leverage. India's market is very attractive for other countries now. So we should use it as a leverage, and that should allow us to attain our own market interests abroad. So what are